new report out by journalists Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, and it's fueling some accusations that former President Donald Trump had been possibly using some burner phones or back channels to communicate to who knows who, right, during the January 6th Capitol riots. This is the time where, of course, the Capitol was under assault by MAGA chuds. Now, the accusations came from the fact that there seems to be some missing time from the White House phone records, meaning there is about almost 8 hours, 7.5 hours, specifically of no records, no phone calls whatsoever. Interesting. Now, here's Woodward and Costa's reporting in the Washington Post. Quote, internal White House records from the day of the attack of the U.S. Capitol were turned over to the House Select Committee show a gap in President Donald Trump's phone logs of about 7 hours and 37 minutes, including the period when the building was being violently assaulted, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post and CBS News. The lack of an official White House notation of any calls placed to or by Trump for 457 minutes on January 6, 2021, from 11:17 a.m. to 6:54 p.m. means that the committee has no record of his phone conversations as the supporters descended on the Capitol, battled overwhelming police, and forcibly entered the building, prompting lawmakers and Vice President Mike Pence to flee for safety. Yes. So, hold on here. So, no records for 7.5 hours on that day where, again, you had all this madness going on. And of course, I can see it now, right? The response is, well, of course you didn't have anybody to talk to. You was too busy presidenting. No, you're kidding. No, that's super shady. Super shady. I mean, again, you want to tell us that during this incredibly tense moment, the president was not talking to anyone? Or that nobody was calling him? Nobody? No bullshit. Nobody believes it. Nobody believes it. Now, the records do show that Trump was active on the phone for part of that day, but then switched over, allegedly. There were conversations that he had with at least 8 people in the morning and 11 people in that evening. But then, during that time, between 11 and about 7, no calls. None. Now, look, I've talked about how there were calls between Trump and Senator Mike Lee. So now what's funny about that is he calls up Mike Lee and he wants to talk to Tommy Tuberville. Why didn't you just call Tommy Tuberville? What? That doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, conversations that he had with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, also documented calls between him and Steve Bannon. And so, again, here you have, obviously, Donald Trump. Look, Donald Trump's a phone addict. He's basically incapable of shutting the fuck up. I think this is common knowledge. So when you look at this mysterious gap, you think, what is going on here? What the hell? What the hell? And so you get these records, and by the way, they came from the National Archives to the January 6th committee. Well, now you've got the House that's like, oh, wait a minute. This is interesting. Why don't we look into maybe the fact that he has some alternative methods of communication, since we have these records that seem to be missing. So the House panel is investigating, according to the report, whether Trump communicated that day through the back channels, phones of aides, or personal disposable phones known as burner phones, according to 2 people with knowledge of the probe, who, like others interviewed for this report, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive information. So, look, we all know what a burner phone is. It's one of those cheap prepaid ones. Very, very hard to trace. If you want to do something shady, I would use one of those. Which, again, is probably why it's a favor of criminals. And Donald Trump, which I guess would be, redundant in this case. At least according to people familiar with his activities, he was always using these alternative methods of communication, including these burner phones, or other means to hide who was calling. In fact, from the report, occasionally when he made outbound calls, the number would show up as a White House switchboard number instead of the president's office, according to a former Trump cabinet official. Other times he would call from different numbers, or no number would appear on the recipient's phone. Just imagine, okay, it makes me think of a hilarious scenario, possible scenario of like somebody, because like when I get a call and I don't see the number, I don't recognize the number, I don't pick it up. I'm like, no, I'm not interested. And then sometimes you get like the scam likely. Oh, imagine getting a call from President Trump from one of these burners and having it show up as scam likely. It would be literally the most appropriate thing to ever pop up. That'd be great. That said, in a statement on Monday night, Trump refuted this and he said, quote, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I have never even heard the term, never heard it before. Don't know what a burner phone is. I don't know. No, okay, great. I have no idea what a burner phone is. Sure, Jan, of course. Look, the committee is also scrutinizing whether it received the full calls, logs from that day. Back to the report here. One lawmaker on the panel said the committee is investigating a possible cover-up, no kidding, of the official White House record from that day. Another person close to the committee said a large gap in records is of intense interest to some lawmakers on the committee, many of whom have reviewed copies of the documents. Both spoke on the condition of anonymity and all that stuff. So now, obviously, yes, I think Donald Trump is considered, is involved in a cover-up. Yes, he's covering things up. He's covering up many things, great many things. Probably even things that he doesn't even have to cover up. He probably covers up anyway. I mean, come on. Yes, he doesn't want to have anyone to have his records at all. And look, we know from previous reports, he would go to extreme lengths to hide those records. He would rip up his papers, his, logs and everything like that. And then aides were forced to tape things back together after he would throw it around like confetti. And so, yeah, there's that. And then, of course, there's the shredding the documents and then flushing them down the toilet. Hi. If I flush it down the toilet, it disappears with the rest of my logs.
Big, massive dumps.
All right, that was uncalled for in this very, very serious story. But no, the guy, buries everything. And so, yes, he goes to weird, unorthodox methods to try to get rid of documentation. And so that's why we're missing a lot of things. And so him using a burner phone, not surprising at all. Not surprising at all. Now, I think, and by the way, I think it's pretty clear that he's got a lot to hide. For example, the call with Steve Bannon, or maybe many calls with Steve Bannon, who, by the way, were working with Peter Navarro to do the Green Bay sweep. Now, that Green Bay sweep was to pressure Mike Pence into not certifying the election. Then they were going to run a huge propaganda campaign for about the next 24 to 48 hours. After the lack of certification, that was going to coincide with fake electors in these states that were going to send in basically fake documentation saying that we do not accept the election results. And here's the real electors, even though they're not the real electors, they were the fake electors that were going to cast their electoral votes for Donald Trump, basically handing him the presidency and doing essentially a soft coup. So I'm pretty sure that if you're having those conversations with Steve Bannon or you're asking for updates, you're not going to want people to see that. You're not going to want people to know that you are in the midst of these conversations that are treasonous. So, and again, one of the calls that they do have records for was in the morning where Bannon urged Trump to pressure Pence to block the certification. And this is according to people familiar with that exchange. They also found several unreported exchanges in those records, the records they have, including other brief calls with Bannon and lawyer Rudy Giuliani that same morning before Trump had a final call with Pence, in which the vice president said, I'm not going to go along with, blocking Congress from formalizing Biden's victory. The call to the vice president was part of that plan, the Green Bay sweep. So now, I think this seems pretty clear. Yes, Trump used burners, back channels, very, very likely, in order to try and coordinate his basically theft of the 2020 election, attempted theft, his conspiracy to do election fraud. That's my personal view of it. I'm wondering if the committee is going to come to the same conclusion. In fact, I think they will. Look, there's a recent court filing from the January 6th committee, and they asserted that it's got some pretty good faith basis for concluding that the president and the members of his staff, of his campaign, had engaged in criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruct the counting of electoral votes by Congress, and more likely than not, committed a federal crime in trying to do so. That's pretty clear, right? That's really, really important. That's devastating. More likely than not, committed a crime. So now what worries me here is, okay, what are we going to do about it? We got some pretty good evidence here, but is it going to be enough? And I am always concerned that no, it will not be. Somehow, guy's going to weasel out of it. Again, that's my personal fear here. Either he's going to weasel out of it somehow, or he's going to be defended by the Republican establishment, or for some reason they might choose not to indict, which would seem very strange. But then again, look at the case that happened in Manhattan, where you had a new district attorney that decided, ooh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to indict. So look, I have those concerns. I am worried that we're not going to see any sort of accountability for the stuff that continues to come out. I mean, we're seeing it. The evidence continues to stack up. And yet, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what the committee does, what kind of power they're able to wield, and really what the Republicans will do in response. And I think that's really, really important. And so, let's see. Hopefully things are starting to fall into place.